productivity, winning strategies, and aligning employer-employee goals. If this sounds like something your business could use more of, then you've come to the right place. The Business Mechanic Show with your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Let Vaughn show you how to develop, improve, and jumpstart your business. So now, please welcome the host of The Business Mechanic, Vaughn Sigmund.
Welcome to the Business Mechanic Show. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmund, co-founder of Results Driven Leadership, where we provide you with the knowledge, skills, and tools you need to become a high-impact manager. Once again, today on this podcast, I'm joined by my cohorts, John Karwalke and Eric Van Doren. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
I was going back through, I was telling you guys before we got on this today, I was going back through some of the podcasts and looking at the most popular ones. And there's an indication based on downloads and listenership that there's a lot of keen interest around either the mistakes I need to avoid or the mistakes I'm making or the traits of leadership. And today we're going to talk about some of the key ways managers tank their success unknowingly. It's managers who just have not had the training opportunity, the education. We don't know what we don't know. Don't come down on yourselves. If you're doing this on purpose, come down on yourself. But today, we're going to help you try to avoid some of the common mistakes that will tank your success. Not by design, it's by just not knowing any better. So uninformed. So let's start talking about those. John, I'm going to start with you since I'm looking at you right now. What is one of the key mistakes you've seen managers in your 40 years make that's tanking their success?
Hey, first of all, I want to say that to our listeners, you guys are taking a great step here because identifying that this is an opportunity that you want to make sure that you're doing the things to make your career success, that you're here with us today. So you're taking a big first step there. So congratulations to all of you. I've seen a lot of things on and where to start. But I think a lot of times, and I hear it a ton, that seems like one of the most frequently Googled reasons people are looking to improve their management skills is time management. And I think that managers, they've been new managers especially, but managers who've been around fail to prioritize their time. And by not doing that properly, that they're suddenly that they can't react strategically. They're really forced to put out fires, and this can really lead to decreased productivity, missing deadlines, you name it. It's awful. And I know, and I even experienced that in my career. There were times when I didn't really prioritize and manage my schedule and really touch base with people. I had a lot more of those problems. So even things that I would do, and this is sometimes it was a long conversation, sometimes it was 15 minutes, but I always scheduled a time frame. I call it call rotations with my people on a weekly basis. That Eric had a call time with me every week at 11 a.m. and we had 30 minutes that was set aside, and I left 45 minutes just in case. And there was times when we got on the phone, I would cover the same couple of things, whether it's sales and expenses on a weekly basis. But sometimes those conversations would be 10 minutes because there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Things were going great and it was swell. And sometimes those conversations would be much longer, but I always made an opportunity for people to talk to me as well and to let me know, was there anything on their mind, anything they needed to talk about? So my thought was, by doing that, it nipped things in the bud so that I didn't have the big fires to put out at a later date. And it's something that I think is really important for all of you leaders out there, is make sure that you make a point of, if it's popping around, if you're in an office setting where you can pop to people's desks for a couple minutes or have them come in your office for a cup of coffee on a Monday morning just to get the week rolling along. But have those scheduled touch base times with your people. And I think that's going to really help you, because that way you can manage the rest of your time and really look at the things that are urgent and not urgent, and you can schedule those things, and you're not going to get the disruptions constantly. So manage your schedule. Don't react to what is going on. Be the one that's driving the bus. And I think that you'll be a lot more productive with your time management.
Super
Yeah.
common, super common. And I think we lose sight, and Eric, I know you want to say something about this, but when we're in the heat of battle and we're dealing with the day to day and this problem, this situation, and this question, and that person, it's real easy to lose sight of our priorities, especially if we haven't established them.
Yeah.
And so it's having priorities, action plans to achieve those priorities. If you don't have that as a routine, as a management approach, you're going to struggle. And in fact, I spent 2 hours with an executive team this morning, which we do every Monday. Just to your point, John, it's scheduled at 9 o'clock on Monday mornings. We pull up their strategic plan, their priorities, their initiatives, their tasks. We all talk about it. And by the way, I'll put a link to this too. It's the best software on the planet, called Align. Please check it out. It is one of the greatest software tools to create a strategic plan and tracking a strategic plan. And it is super simple and user friendly. I love it. I've got almost every one of my clients using this program now. That's the plug. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. But you've got to have something in writing. To your point, John, it's your priorities, and you've got to schedule time for those priorities every week. If you don't, something else is going to manage your time, and those priorities aren't going to get addressed. So great advice. Eric, what were you going to say?
Yeah, it's along the lines of that. I think there's a piece there, selfishly, when you get promoted, new job, and you've got multitude of things to do. I think there's a thing that you have to carve a time out for yourself. I think there's a thing that allows you, if you're a night person, carve that time out at night to make sure you get your stuff done. A, B, C, D. I'm a morning person, so I carved my time out early in the morning to make sure that I got my stuff done. It allowed me to free me up to have those conversations when those things happened on a dime. I at least had my stuff done. So I think that was a real important piece for time management for me. And I couldn't do it without it. It was all the difference in the world, especially
Super
being
important.
in a job. Yeah.
Super important, knowing your high energy times and scheduling your most important activities when you got that energy. And it's also scheduling your high priority things when it works for the rest of your schedule. If there's something in your business that picks up at around a certain time during the day, don't schedule important stuff during that time. In fact, let's do this. I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some of our courses. Anybody that clicks on these links, you're going to get these courses for half price.
Nice.
And I'm going to put, already you've told me I need to put 2 in there, John and Eric. How to create and manage successful action plans will go in there, and stress reducing time management will go in there. Game changers if you're struggling with staying on top of your time. Check it out, half price. Now, Eric, what is a common mistake that you see managers make that tank their success?
Boy, I tell you, it's one of my biggest ones, because I had to learn the hard way probably 25 years ago, being multitude of locations at a time. I think setting up your time for feedback. And I think the more time that I had it, we were set. Some companies do feedback just one time a year, annually. And you don't talk to your person. You give that feedback, and that's where you get the big saucer eyes. You know what I mean? What? And you're saying, huh? What are you talking about? And it by far is the most thing that we changed in a company that we were in prior to, that allowed us to talk more on a direct basis monthly. We started quarterly, went to monthly. but it allowed us to actually change the way we went about going through these things. And it was really about, I think, about caring deeply about our associates, and allowed us to get feedback quickly, and it allowed us to challenge them directly as soon as we could. When something went down, we challenged them directly. And I think the feedback piece, millennials, Gen Zs, they need stuff quickly, because they can find out an answer on their phone in 2.5 seconds, and they want answers like this. So they want feedback very similar. I think that, to me, is a piece that you could tank your success very quickly of not giving feedback. I'll call it on a timely basis, which is consistent. I think you stay consistent throughout your times. If it's monthly check-ins, a weekly call, I think you can give feedback, individual calls, whatever it is, you stay consistent. I think that's the thing that would improve you and wouldn't tank your success, is feedback.
And Eric, great point. Feedback is essential. Me and my statistics.
Yes.
4 million employees surveyed in 2022, 4 million in surveys. Of those surveys, 82% of those 4 million employees had received no feedback, no developmental feedback from their manager in the past 90 days. And when asked, did they want developmental feedback? Did they want to know what they could do better? 93% said yes, overwhelmingly yes, they want that feedback, and managers are holding that back from them.
Yeah.
And why do you suppose, Eric, they're holding back developmental feedback, in your opinion?
More than likely is what John said earlier about their time management would be one of them. Number two, probably they might be fearful of a hard conversation at times.
Yep. That's, to me, that's the number one and number two reason, 100%. You say anything different, John?
No, I was going to say that in remembering too, that roughly 7 out of 10 of the people working for you are probably S on the DISC profile. Those are typically people who aren't going to ask for that feedback. So if you're not consciously competent in giving that feedback and making sure that you're planning it strategically and doing it as regularly and soon after the performance, as Eric mentioned, if you're not doing that, they're probably never going to get it. And I think that really sends a message to them at some point that they're really not valued. And I think that, because a lot of times they have an opinion, but they're not going to offer it. And I think that you got to pull that out of people sometimes and give them feedback, but also ask for their feedback. I think it's a two-way street.
Yeah, I would make one more point on that. I think the feedback, sometimes when we hear feedback as a term, it feels like a negative thing. It feels like, and truly it can be positive. Good
feedback. Find them doing something right.
Absolutely.
Catch them doing a good thing.
Yes.
And to that point, here's another statistic, and this has been constant for years and years. 70% of managers' time, and I think it was 1.5 million managers that were surveyed, 70% of their time is dealing with the aftermath or the issues created by problem employees. 70% of their time.
Yeah.
And you think, what? That's insane. If I were to devote some valuable time to the development of my employees, giving them feedback, giving them direction, setting goals, setting expectations, I would eliminate a lot of this frustration I would face all the time. And to the other point is, very often our best employees get punished because we're spending so much time with the problems that our underperformers are creating. Our good employees get punished because they don't get that positive feedback. And what happens when you're working hard and nobody's noticing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the other thing too, Vaughn, and you talk about all of that time that's wasted, and you think about this by letting something ruminate. It's just percolating in there over and over, and you're not addressing it, and you're thinking about it all the time. And now it's become, to Eric's point, it's become that big conversation. It's a counseling session. It's not just a little bit of feedback. It's a counseling session. So it's taken all of your energy and your time, and you're not being productive, and what you ought to be doing is building your freaking business. So I think by constant feedback, it doesn't need to be real formal. It's an ongoing conversation. It's not always bad. Sometimes it's patting someone on the back. Hey, that's a great thing to do. And you might see that behavior more frequently and reinforced. So I think that there's nothing negative. There's no downside to doing feedback. There's only upsides to it all the way around. Because if it's good performance, you might see more of it. If it's something that's done bad, not being done properly, it can be done differently. And it's fixed. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, John, it reminded me, the closer to the time of the need or the feedback, or where they need feedback, either positive or negative, let's just talk about developmental feedback at this point. The closer to the time of the incident, for want of a better word, the more likely you are to alter a better course for positive behavior in the future. And the quicker you do that, the sooner you do that. It's not building up. What happens and what gets the can kicked down the road is the problem builds up. We're putting it off. We're putting it off. We're putting it off. Right. It's become enormous. And then we really dread having that conversation with someone.
Yeah. We're laying in bed the night before thinking about that conversation, and we're calling HR and bringing them involved. And it's bad.
Yeah. And the person's going to be mad. To Eric's point earlier, you haven't told me this. I've got 6 adult children, many of which did not pick up my traits of doing a little bit of everything I have to do every day or every week, so I don't have a big project later. And I'll use this analogy: laundry. Laundry is done every Sunday by me in my house every week. It's been that way forever. One, because I'm a little anal, I do it myself. I like my laundry done a certain way, so I take on that responsibility. But I do a little bit of laundry, and it's just my wife and me every week, so I don't ever have a big project of laundry. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it's not a lot of time. I throw it in, I pull it out, I throw it in, I pull it out. It's done. Every adult kid I have allows it to, not every, most. It piles up. It piles up until they don't have anything to wear. And then they spend an entire day doing laundry.
Yeah.
It's this enormous job. And they hate doing laundry because it's such an enormous project where it doesn't have to be that way. How is that analogy?
I think that works. That would make me want to do laundry. I got a load to get out of the drawer. I got to run.
So
I've actually used that before. You don't want the festering laundry. You don't want that.
No, absolutely not. But that's the whole thing. You don't put it off. It's just like feedback. Don't put it off. Listeners, do not put it off. Take care of it. Nip it in the bud. If there's something that's going on that you don't want to see more of, nip it in the bud. If it's something you want to see more of, pat them on the back because you might see it again. It's just saying, to Vaughn, to your point, don't delay. Just do it immediately. You can even ask the person who just did the performance, how do you think that went, Eric? What do you think? What would you do differently next time? And they might come up with a great answer. Say, hey, maybe try this. It doesn't need to be real negative. It can just conversation.
No, make it encouraging. And in fact, let's, also in the notes for this podcast will be a link to the performance management course. It's probably, in my opinion, I wrote all these courses, except with the exception of a couple you guys have done. But this performance management course to me is the most valuable of all the courses we offer. There is so many intricacies and nuances to performance management, and done right, it is amazing. Done wrong, it craters your success. And so there's right ways and wrong ways, and ins and outs, and pluses and minuses. And if you misstep too far, you're going to have a negative outcome for what you're trying to achieve. So invest in this course, performance management course. The link's in there. Take it, learn from it. All the tools you need are in there. It's the review form, the write-ups, the PIPs, everything you need's in there. You'll learn a lot from it.
Amen.
uh, it's very important that everybody in management knows how to do that.
And
I'm
I'll
going to
say,
get in, and I think underlying all these is one that
Mhm.
I'd like to throw in there is lack of communication skills.
Yeah.
And you know, I think so many managers believe they're great communicators because they're great talkers or they explain things really well. And yes, that is important. And that is part of
Mhm.
being a good communicator. But there's so many more variables to communication. In fact, there's an old saying that the biggest flaw in communication is to believe that it's actually taking place.
mm,
Think about that. You can borrow that one, Eric.
I got it.
that's right.
Because communication has to be a two-way street. Managers tend to have monologues, not dialogues. And yes, that's very efficient. I say it, you do it, move on. But that
Mhm.
level of communication only gets you so far in your success as a manager. And the more you violate the skill sets needed to be an effective communicator, your productivity decreases, your team members are going to become less and less engaged and motivated. Your projects will slow, mistakes will happen, there'll be less buy-in and engagement or enthusiasm about getting things done. And you just created more work for yourself. It's one of the most destructive things I see managers do is believe that they have an effective communication approach when in fact they do not. They struggle conveying their ideas, their instructions clearly, and they do not collaborate and create a dialogue with their team in order to get a robust buy-in to getting things done. It leads to a lack of trust, a lack of respect. And the problem is most managers believe that if somebody is having a problem with me, they'll come tell me. There's a big communication mistake because they ain't going to tell you nothing.
Mhm.
You're the boss. Come on. I've got a really good relationship with them, Vaughn. Yeah, sure you do. And they're not going to tell you your poop stinks either. So understand that. It is the rare manager that has the very rare manager who has the leadership and communication skills that their people trust and respect them enough that if that manager is fouling up in some way, that their direct report will come to them and tell them. If you are living in your management world believing that somebody's going to tell you when you're doing something wrong, one of those people either being your boss, you're wrong, or an employee, you're wrong, because they're not going to do it until the problem is blown up and becomes a huge issue. Somebody quits, you have to fire somebody, the project gets blown, the customer gets mad, something's going to go wrong. And do you blame it on yourself, Mr. and Miss Manager? Rarely. You blame it on these damn employees. Guess what? It's your fault. There's a lot of the feedback, the very nice comments we get back on this show is, Vaughn, you keep it real. And by God, I'm keeping it real right there because
It's real.
your lack of communication skills is going to make you struggle and you don't know why, because you don't know what you don't know. So again, click on the damn link in the show notes and take our course on effective communication skills. You will be amazed at what you'll be able to take away from there. Eliminate some struggles, build stronger relationships. And Eric, I know you and I know several people we work with that really struggle with this, but how have some of the outcomes you've seen when somebody starts with us and almost everyone rates themselves a 7, 8, 9, 10 on communication skills. And then they take this course and they reevaluate and they say, oh, hold on. I don't know as much as I thought I knew on communication. Eric, what have been some of the turnarounds you've seen? from people actually investing in themselves and getting better at communication.
Yeah, you got to keep it real, Vaughn. I think anytime you use self-assessment or the tools that we have in there, it's almost the mirror on the wall type of aspect. If you look in the mirror the first time when you're getting trained, you're going through these pieces and you're like, darn, I look good. I look real good. And you're saying to yourself, I have a great communication. I'm a great communicator. I'm a 9, 10, 3. And after you go through these courses, you come back and you go, how do you improve? First, you got to self-assess and look in the mirror and say, I got some warts there. I got some wrinkles here. And I have no hair, Vaughn, but you have to go back and look at yourself. And that's the first phase of improvement, right? I think in any kind of those pieces is self-assessment. That's a real number. And then you set your standard. You go, obviously the standard wants to be 8s, 9s, 10s, of course, but you want to continue. Start somewhere where you really are. And then you grow yourself up and you'll see that improvement. Specifically, as you move on, we've done a couple of these in a couple of our clients. And when the light bulb goes off, there's moments out there and you'll see the person go, oh my God, you're right. 2 months ago, you were right. I didn't do this piece and I did this afterwards. And I allowed myself to grade myself a certain number. And yeah, you're absolutely right. When you have those moments, it's beautiful.
And Eric, you can see, you and I have both seen with one team in particular recently, that hockey stick, right?
Yeah.
Their effectiveness, their performance, and all of a sudden they get these 3 or 4 things that we've talked about. They start applying it and you see a hockey stick in performance and enthusiasm and motivation and alignment and energy. And it's just, woof, all of a sudden their life just got way easier, because they're applying some of these tools and avoiding these common mistakes that were tanking them, and they did not realize it.
I didn't see
and it. John, we'll start bringing it home in a minute, but communication skills. You and I have worked personally for some exceptional communicators. And we know that, in fact, hell, that's where so much of these courses come from, is our career. This is what we experienced from really great leaders. I had some crappy ones, don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
You and I
I've seen both.
Yeah.
We've seen both of them.
We had some really good ones that created a huge improvement in how we performed. And you've had thousands and thousands of employees, as has Eric, and the importance of these communication skills or the lack thereof. What's one of the things or one of the key elements you believe a manager, in order to avoid tanking their success, needs to get focused on in the way of communication?
Well, I think the biggest thing, I'll just say in terms of, if we're just talking communication, is the listening piece of it, because I think that's the hardest thing. I know for me, I've struggled with that. I still struggle with that. And in the tendency to want to have that monologue, to use your word, and be in charge of the situation. Like I said, you'll get things done, but it's to a limited degree. I think that and if you're a high D, trust me, or you're going to want to just sometimes bite your tongue. Don't cut people off. Don't interrupt them. Let them complete their thought, because you're going to get so much information and so much more out of that you're going to be just amazed at what you get from communication skills. And I think that again, if there's any words of wisdom, because I tell you, because I know exactly who you're talking with about Vaughn, because I have lunch with him hopefully once a month, and so it's great. So I love keeping that relationship, because I always learn something. But I think that I've also dealt with managers who wouldn't let you say a freaking word, okay? And they would just cut you off and just tell you. And I got to tell you, it was a tough pill to swallow for me, having to work for this person for a while. It was, I got by because I'm pretty tough. But the thing is that you know the difference, and to feel the value you feel as an employee too, when your boss actually listens to you, it builds trust. It builds it's just like a big pat on the back. So it's almost like positive reinforcement to let the boss, let them give you their ideas. So those of you who are out there, communication skills, just trust me, it doesn't start with the mouth, okay, or what you can write. It starts with the ears. So I think we talked about that in another podcast, but listen, that's your strongest communication skill.
Lead with your ears. Absolutely.
Yes.
It's such a great point. And to just add just a point at the end of that, just a dot at the end of that, is you as a leader, as a manager, the more you can teach people how to think versus what to think, the better they're going to become and the easier your job is going to be, the more successful you're going to be in your career, because you have a group of people working with you who can figure things out. But if they're 100% reliant on you answering their questions, 100% reliant on you telling them everything to do, and then you complain about them not having initiative, come on. You've created that yourself. So there's a few people that will listen to this show and say, ooh, that might be me. And hell, there's no shame in that. We've all been there, right? We've all been there. Somebody had to point it out to me, John and Eric. And listen, there's no shame in it. The shame is not learning and doing something about it, not working on improving yourself. That's the shame, the thinking your poop doesn't stink. So it does, folks. It does. And listen, it's, John, you talked about it in the beginning. You complimented everybody for listening to this podcast. They're working on themselves. There's nobody listening to this looking to hear some opera. They're here to work on themselves. So sometimes I can be a little harsh and blunt. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. You need to hear that. Go work on yourselves. Go look in the mirror, to Eric's point. Assess yourself. Realize you don't know everything, and make a commitment to improvement. Take one of these things that we talked about today, commit to working on it, invest a couple bucks and learn how to do it. And more importantly, we're going to have the opportunity for you all to come join Eric and John.
Yes.
And discuss what you're learning and what your challenges are. John, I'll start with you. Tell them about this great opportunity we're presenting.
Yeah, we are going to have we call it office hours. So once a week, every week, Eric and I will be hosting an open forum where a small group, probably a dozen folks or so, will be able to join us via Zoom and have a open conference to discuss it could be the webinars, because we're giving webinars every other week. So it could be the webinars that we talk about. We had a great one last week about hiring great people. So if you're struggling with hiring great people, you can watch that. But by the same token, we've got a course that we've offered that's on the show links, I believe. But we can talk about roundup of that webinar, or any management questions you have or challenges that you're facing. We can discuss an open forum. Because I got to tell you, if you're dealing with something at work, chances are you've got a colleague or someone else in the industry is dealing with the same thing. Okay, because most of the time, the problems that we deal with, they're people problems, and they're pretty universal. So we're there to talk you through those. Could be a specific problem, it could be a general problem, but we'd love to have those conversations. I think it'd be a lot of fun, and it'd be a really good use of your time if you want to grow your skills and learn some problem solving, because again, somebody else in the group might have the answer. So it's all about talking it out.
Yeah, your problems aren't unique. They're not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people having the same challenge you are. Some of these folks have maybe figured it out and can offer some of their own experiences to you.
Yep.
That's great, but it's a nice, safe environment. And Eric, what do you have to add to that?
I would say, working on our time management, we want to make sure we set up our one time a week for office hours.
Oh, make sure you mention the time, Eric. Sorry.
The time is actually good. The time is actually 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's where John is. John's in Maine. I'm in California. So we are so excited to have a conversation, have a dialogue of conversation, what we're going to be doing. Again, it's an open forum, which is terrific. And if you've ever spent some time with John, and I know there's thousands and thousands of people through our lives we're pretty darn fun. To tell you the truth, this is tame for us. Okay. We have open ideas, and we are a blast to be with, and we will give you guys some real good information.
Yeah, join us. It'll be a great time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so check it out. I'll have the sign up link in the show notes. Fill it out. You're under no obligation. It's no cost. Free advice. I think it's probably going to be worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of free advice to you. But come enjoy it, check it out. No obligation. We'd love to. It's just our way of giving back. We love to give back.
Absolutely.
And please check it out. Gentlemen, we're going to bring this thing home. Thank you so much, John and Eric. These conversations are awesome. It's like we're sitting around drinking a bourbon.
Yeah.
And love it. And I might have a bourbon after this, or
Good call.
yeah, go get in the hot tub and have a bourbon.
That's right.
And sounds like fun. It's a beautiful day here. And thank you all, as always, for listening today, committing to your own personal improvement. Your employees are going to love you for it. Your boss is going to love you for it. Your career is going to love you for it. And if you ever need anything, visit us at our website, rdltraining.com. That's Romeo Delta Lima Training.com. We've got a ton of courses and information on there. We got our blog on there. The other podcasts are on there. It is a wealth of information. Come check us out. We love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll talk to you all again next week.